It wasn't until wedding photography that I started to have this lens kind of tickling the back of my brain, always constantly whispering to me. All right, today I want to talk about these two lenses right here, the 1.250 RF Canon lens and the 28 to 70 2.0 RF Canon lens as well. These two are my absolute favorites. I have shot with a 50 from the very beginning. The 50 1.2 was a lens that I dreamt about buying when I owned my first camera, and I had a kit lens on it. Every time that I borrowed one or rented one, I was absolutely floored by the results and how beautiful the pictures would come out when I used that lens, specifically at 1.2. As a portrait lens, it was absolutely gorgeous. I love that the perspective was so close to what my eye sees. What I mean by that is, like, when I would be walking about, I would see a frame in my mind. I'd put up my camera with a 51.2 and boom, there it was. Just that same distance. I didn't have to move back, forth. It was just that good and a very intuitive lens, which is actually a lens that I recommend to a lot of photographers when they start. I loved it for a traveling lens, loved it for portraits, for product, for all kinds of stuff. And then this guy came in. Now let me preface this. It wasn't until wedding photography that I started to have this lens kind of tickling the back of my brain, always constantly whispering to me about how much better your photos will be. No, not really that, but how much easier your wedding day will be with me. And that's because it's like every wedding photographer was always running around with a 28. It was a 24 to 70 and then the 70 to 200 on a different body. They had the full range covered. But that 24 to 70 was always a 2.8, I believe, at the lowest, which for me wasn't low enough ever. So I was obsessed and married to the idea that I was going to forever shoot weddings and everything with my 50 1.2. Yes, I had other wide angle lenses. So I had like the 24 1.4. I had my longer, the 135 2.0. I had a bunch of other lenses that I used that was really all about primes. I just love the idea of being able to go wide open, and just, I felt like it made me a better photographer to have a prime lens, because it forces you to explore other perspectives, other angles. You're moving. You're not just lazily standing in one spot and zooming in and out. Now, I'm not saying that's what people do when they use telephoto lenses, but in my mind, it just felt like it was the way to go. It was a way to get myself moving throughout the wedding day and not be static, and explore different angles, stepping forward, stepping backwards, and it would open my mind to other possibilities as opposed to zooming in and out. I found that to not be the case later on. The 51.2 was always the lens that I used from the beginning. Once I could afford one with an EF format mount, so that's when I had my 5D Mark II. I bought the EF 51.2 and I absolutely loved it. I shot with that lens for years and years and years. And then when I started doing weddings, I still shot with that lens, and I shot with a 50 1.2, I want to say, for 10 years. So I did weddings for 10 years with that lens, and I absolutely loved it. About a year or two ago, when this guy came out, that's when the game changed. So I changed into the R cameras, so the Canon R5, upgraded from the Marks, the Mark IIIs and Mark IVs. And I started noticing that, one thing I noticed is that my old EF 50 was not really compatible with my R5. I had two R5 bodies. I tried it on two different R5 bodies with their EF to RF mount adapter, and it just kept having trouble. It wouldn't focus. It just wouldn't operate. I kept getting the error pop up where it's saying the lens is not communicating. After some research, I found out that was a common problem with a 51.2 EF on our bodies, which pushed me to buy the RF version of that same lens. And I'll tell you right now, I do not ever regret making that purchase. I should have done that right away when I bought the R5, because the focal speed on this thing was crazy different from the EF. So it was a lot faster than the EF. It was a lot sharper. It nailed the focus, just no problem. The R5 paired up with this 51.2 RF was a magical combination. The focus was so spot on every single time, never missed, and I absolutely loved it. Then when this one came out and it went from 2.8 to a 2.0 aperture, it started to become a little more appealing. So I had for 10 years been shooting with two bodies, a 50 always on my primary body, and never took this off. And then on my secondary body, I would rotate between the 24 1.4 and 135 2.0. But the 50 was always my go-to. I could have shot an entire wedding with this lens and loved it. That being said, I want to make note that there was moments where I would notice during the wedding day, this specifically speaking to weddings, okay? During the wedding day, when things happen really fast and people are moving, it's very dynamic. You don't have a lot of control of where things are taking place, and you're expected to capture these moments as they're happening real time right in front of you without missing anything. So I would have the two bodies. I would have the 50 and the 24 when we're doing in-room getting ready stuff. And let's say this moment's happening, there's movement, somebody's coming towards me, and I would be on my 50 shooting it, and all of a sudden they're getting closer, and I'm like, dang, this moment is amazing. I want to get on the 24. By the time I did the switch, which I mean, it's quick, you're dropping one body to the side, grabbing, at that point I was using the hold fast straps. So you could literally just drop it, let it swing, and grab the next one. By the time I was doing that switch, I was missing the moment that I was wanting to capture. Now, maybe the moment, the words or the emotions were still happening, but the framing, the time for that framing, that right picture, the one had passed in the switch that I had made. And I found that a bunch of times. I found that during the exit after the ceremony. I found that during the in-room getting ready, especially when little things are happening, like the dress getting put on, or moments like that when you're like shooting tight with a 50, and all of a sudden you're like, oh, okay, gotta get a quick wide. And that moment, by the time you get it up, the moment's passed, they shifted. And yeah, you can be like, oh, will you get hands on here again? Or will you do this again? But I don't like making them recreate moments in a fake manner. I want things to happen naturally and me capturing them as they happen. So I kept getting bummed about that happening. But this lens was still nailing it. I mean, I absolutely loved the photos that came out of it, but I kept having those moments where I'm like, dang, if I could have just had that lens already, I wouldn't have missed that shot. I'll tell you, this lens had come out, the 28-70 2.0, and I had talked to so many friends that had adopted that lens right away because they were already using the 24-70 2.8, and now they came out with 2.0. They bought that thing, obviously major upgrade in aperture and low light capability. That's huge. And they were raving about it. I'm like, just really tempted to give it a try because of that one thing, as I was saying. First off, I was sick of carrying two bodies around for most of the day. And I figured that 28-70 might give me the ability to shoot most of the day with just one body as opposed to two. The other thing was not missing those moments, making it simple, not having to switch bodies, not having to switch lenses. So that's when I kind of caved and I said, look, it's a 2.0. I know it's not 1.2. That 1.2 to 2.0 might not sound like a big difference, but when we're talking about really low light scenarios like after twilight when the sun set, it does make a huge difference. So that 1.2 aperture jump to 2.0 might mean maybe having your ISO a lot lower or your shutter speed a little faster. So it does make a big difference in low light, absolutely. But anyways, I had gone to a point where I wanted to try something up. I wanted to spice it up for myself. I've been shooting with the same lens for 10 years, and I figured, why not try something new? Why not don't corner myself into this I'm a primes only guy, which I was forever. Let's try something new. So I bought this thing. First thing I'm going to talk about is when I bought it, it was a price difference. Okay, so this lens right here, the 50 1.2, bang, Brand new is right now, I believe, is $2,599. So $2,599 for the 50, whereas the 28 to 70 is clocking in at $3,399. So $3,399. That is an expensive lens. But if you look at the size of the glass on this thing, I mean, that is crazy. You know what I mean? What is it? A 90? Yeah, there's a 95 millimeter glass against. I mean, look at the size of this one. Boom. There you go. So this one is a lot smaller, 77 millimeters against a 95 millimeter. You are paying for more glass, obviously. Size difference, you see, it's much, much larger than the 50 1.2. If we're talking about weight, you're talking about a 2-pound lens against a 3.15-pound lens. Also, the weight distribution in it, because it is taller and it has that big piece of glass on the front, it does feel a little front heavy. I do like the feature of locking it, so you can lock it at 28. So when you're walking around, it doesn't just slide on you, which I haven't found. I've owned it for more than a year, and I haven't found that it just stretches out on me. It's actually pretty tight still, and I've used the heck out of this thing. I mean, I've shot for a whole year, so I've shot a lot of weddings. I want to say over 70 or 80 weddings with this lens, and I'm loving it. Ba-da-ba-ba-ba. I bought the lens and I decided to give it a try. First impression was this thing is huge. I don't know how I feel about it being so big and so heavy. Paired up with my R5, it just felt very bulky, very heavy. It took a little time to get used to, from shooting always primes to all of a sudden having a lens that went from 28 to 70. It felt weird, you know, it felt weird. It felt like I was cheating on myself, but once again, I wasn't going to corner myself and I was going to give it a try. And the 28 to 70 really surprised me. Right away, the one thing that I noticed was that I wasn't missing as many moments. I was getting a lot more variety when it came to framing. So I was shooting, you know, at 50, I was shooting a little bit at 70, at 35 and 28. I did find myself, funny enough, I feel like after all that time of shooting with a 50, my eye was so trained to be at 50 millimeters that I would be like, you know, not even looking at what range I'm at. I'd be taking a photo, zooming in and out, and I would always land on 50. So when I would look at my photos on Lightroom later, I would notice that the 50 millimeter focal point was always what I was landing at when shooting portraits of my couples if I wasn't wide at 28. So I thought that was kind of silly. However, I did notice a big increase in, you know, keepers when it came to not missing those in-between moments, those transition moments, saving a lot of time from having to switch from one body to the other. That was a big one for me. I noticed that the focus was a little faster, surprisingly enough, on the 28 to 70 opposed to what it was on the 50 1.2. That was something that I did not expect at all. I want to say I did not expect that the focus was as fast, which is incredible being such a bigger piece of glass. The other thing I want to mention is the bokeh difference. So when shooting wide open 2.0 against 1.2, obviously the 1.2 is going to have a way creamier, more beautiful looking bokeh in your photos. When you're shooting, let's say we put this one at 50 and this one is already at 50, and at wide open, meaning this one at 2.0, this one at 1.2, the fall off and the bokeh in the photo is obviously going to be greater on the 50 1.2. However, that being said, it wasn't as big a difference to the point where I couldn't live without it. And yes, I said that. And your clients who are not photographers will not notice the difference. Okay, that's another big one for me. That after 13 years of shooting weddings, I've realized that your clients are not photographers and they're not going to notice the little things that we obsess over. I bought it August of 2024 and I've shot every single wedding with it. since. I did try one wedding to switch back to the 50 to see what would happen, and I found myself going to the 28 to 70 because I felt like it just made more sense for me in weddings. It made more sense. Some people are going to hate to hear that, but when you are shooting a wedding by yourself, I can have this body on me and shoot the entire wedding by myself. That was the other plus. I found that I was only grabbing one camera the entire time except ceremony and reception time. So if I'm doing reception photos and there's speeches happening and I want to get tights, I would throw on my 135 on the second body and get those tights. But during getting ready, first looks, portrait times, I would shoot one body with a 28 to 70. And the secondary body would only come out for ceremony and reception moments. The rest of the time, it was just beautiful. I could get rid of a secondary body and I only had one body on me, way less weight, way easier. So I really liked the idea of that. It took a little time to get used to handling such a beast, but now I'm obsessed. I will say the one thing that I have been doing lately. So this last, I want to say 6 months, I have been bringing my 50 1.2 to weddings again. And the reason being is sometimes during shooting table details, I have missed that, this is more personal. I have missed that look of the really soft bokeh wide open. So for a couple of photos, if I see something that I know would be really special to capture with that 50, I'll bring it out and I'll put it on the secondary body and I'll keep the 28 to 70 on the main. Or even at nighttime, I've been really into getting table details and decor shots with natural ambient light once everything's dark and let's say there's candles or twinkle lights or chandeliers, and getting those table details in the night. I do bring this one out because obviously having it at 1.2 allows me to get that ISO a little lower, and that bokeh 1.2 in low light is pretty dreamy. I still love this lens, but now anytime I'm doing shoot, if I go to do an engagement session, I bring this. If I go to a rehearsal dinner, I bring this. This has now become the lens that's always on my camera, on my primary body. It's the 28 to 70 and it's always there. I love the versatility of it. I love the ability to, be shooting portraits with a couple and get different perspectives that a 50, a 35, and a 70 millimeter could give you, and then get those wide ambient shots to establish the scene at 28. It's really made a big difference in ease and maximizing my time at wedding days. Differences that stood out, as I said, the size, the weight, the 28 to 70 is a little heavier. Being 2.0 against 1.2, it is about $1,000 more expensive, almost. Not $1,000, but it's $33.99 against $25.99. I think it's worth it. If you don't have it already and you've been on the fence about it, stop thinking about it, buy it, try it. I think you're gonna love it. And if you don't, you can resell it. The 28 to 70 is something that I highly recommend, especially if you're a wedding photographer. I know there's major debates about 28 to 70 versus a 50, blah, blah, blah. Yes. Are your clients going to notice? No. Are you shooting weddings for yourself? Yeah, I do it as an art because I love it, but is your final product for you or is it for your client that's paying you and hiring you to shoot that wedding? It's for your client, not for yourself. So if you're like, oh, nothing can match it, the look is just the 51.2, it's unmatched, it's the look, remember, you can still do your own work with a 51.2, but if you want easy, if you want more versatility on the wedding day, I would say the 28 to 70 is going to give you that, and it's going to allow you to do the best you can for your couples. Once again, if you have the 51.2 and that's all you got, you're still going to kill it. And I'm not saying this is a king maker right here, but I just think if you have the money and you want to switch it up, it definitely helped me. It rekindled something in me with photography. It just brought a little excitement of having a new piece of equipment, and I've been shooting with it since August of last year, and I've been having fun, and I'm not looking back. But I will never, ever, ever sell this one. And if I travel, obviously a smaller lens is going to be more helpful to have. But yes, I hope this review was helpful. For me, I wish I had somebody that had spoken about those things when I was looking to buy this, because I went back and forth for so long. I wasted so much time waiting for a good review where I just had to dive in and try it for myself. If you have any questions about it, let me know. I'll put the links to both lenses down below. Maybe I'll make, on the next couple weddings, I'll take the same photos at 50 with both lenses so we can do a little comparison. So if you're interested in seeing that, let me know, and I'll make sure to capture that. Both lenses wide open, same focal length, same photo, same light, same everything, and we can do a little side-by-side comparison. Yeah, hope you enjoyed this one, and we'll see you on the next one.